Hi, my name is Diego Sebastián Díaz Guarín. I'm going to talk about reducing my carbon footprint. So, in the in this step, the carbonfootprint.com page will be used to calculate my carbon footprint. This is the first step if you want to reduce the effects of your carbon footprint. Identifying the value is the main thing. Steps are shown below in the next slide. The first thing to do is choose the country where you live and the period of time where you want to know the amount of your carbon footprint. The first thing to do is choose the country where you live and the period of time where you want to know the amount of carbon footprint. This is important due to the amount of carbon footprint is not the same in two different countries and varies depending on the duration of the analysis. According with carbonfootprint.com, selecting the country allows us to offer you a comparison of your carbon footprint with the average per person in your country and to adjust the calculator units. Furthermore, for some countries we have more accurate data on emissions from electricity generation and on gas and electricity price. I chose Colombia with a period uh, since 1st August of 2019 until 7th 31 July of 2020. Uh, Housed. In this step, well, the first I will show you some of the steps that I choose to reduce my carbon footprint. The first step is calculating my carbon footprint. I'm going to do this through the carbon footprint page. So, in calculating my carbon footprint, I have the first section, which is house. In this step, the consumption of basic public services such as electricity and natural gas will be used, and additionally, the consumption of other resources such as gas and coal will be taken into account. Important: before starting with the data about the consumption of public service, I must make a clarification. Regarding the electricity consumption data, the oldest bill I could get corresponds to the consumption of March 2020. That receipt contains the consumption data for the previous 5 months. Therefore, I only have the data from October 2019. However, to complete the consumption data for the remaining months, August and September, I implemented the average as a data computation tool, calculating the average with the consumption data that I have and assigning this value to the months of August and September. To obtain all consumption data, I decided to write to company that provides the service to obtain complete information. However, their response is that I had to fill out a form where the response time could take several weeks. Unfortunately, they have not yet given me an answer. In the annex section, I attached the test. And for the gas consumption data, all the data were obtained except for the month of August. Therefore, for this month, the average is assigned. Additionally, in the annex section, you will find photographs of all the bills that I have for electricity and gas consumption. So, in the electricity, in the section, electricity, according with my electric bills, I have the next data. As we can see, the month with the highest energy consumption is November, and the total consumption is equal to 1218. On this slide, we have an example and a proof about my consumption energy. In the case of the electricity factor for Colombia, this has a value of 0.164 kilograms CO2 divided by kilowatts hour. According to the Republic newspaper, this value must be entered to calculate the carbon footprint. In natural gas, according with my natural gas bills, I have the next data. And as we can see, the month with the highest natural gas consumption is November, and the total consumption is equal to 7,511.4. To place the data on the carbon footprint page, it was necessary to find a conversion factor. According to the Propano Gas Company, the conversion factor is 11.7 to go from cubic meters to kilowatts hour. Therefore, performing the following operation, the gas consumption is calculated in units of kilowatts hour. So here the operation and an example of the consumption of natural gas. And here we have the other things that house take into account, that is heating oil, that I have not used heating oil, coal. An approximate consumption of coal is 5 kilograms. LPG, I have not used LPG as fuel. Propane, I have not used propane. Wooden pellets, I have not used wooden pellets. And so we have the total house footprint, which is equal to 0.32. In the next section, I have not made flights in the last year, therefore 0. In the car, for this part, the beginning of the period for calculation the carbon footprint must be taken into account. So in the second semester of 2019, while I was in the university, basically the gasoline consumption was 0 because I live near the university and I was a pedestrian. The same thing happened in the first semester of 2020 while I was in Chile. And for the rest, I will perform the calculation taking into account the car's gas consumption per kilometer and the number of kilometers traveled in the trips I made. First of all, I will begin by calculating an approximate number of kilometers that I have traveled in the year under analysis. According with Google Maps, the results for my trips are the following, and the longest trip is the one I made from Bogota to Cali. And according to the specification of Chevrolet Spark, the car which I made the trips, the gasoline consumption is 5.11 liters divided by 100 kilometers. This value is necessary to perform the calculations. In motorbike, I have not ridden in a motorbike the last year, therefore 0. Bus and ride, an estimate of kilometers traveled by bus and taxi will be taken. Bus trips correspond to trips that I rarely made from the Fab Lab to my home while I was studying. The trips by taxi correspond to the trips I made in the city of Cali, and the data of kilometers traveled that I previously mentioned were obtained from Google Maps, and they are approximations. Secondary, in this step, the values of each category will be placed. Values will be an approximation, but some are the exact price. For example, we can see that education is the highest value, and this is an exact price, and also computers and IT equipment, but the rest is an approximation. So in this we have the secondary and the other items. And this slide I have the data summary. So in the final results, here it is important to identify the items that contribute the most amount of carbon in order to establish targets and directly reduce my carbon footprint as much as possible. The next step is set a target, and I select 8 targets. The most important that I consider: we have become a low meat eater, cut restaurant expenses in half, change LEDs or the lighting of the house, have purchase of flooring, textiles and shoes, reduce the bus trips that I took in university, do not buy any technological equipment since I don't need them, except that they will get lost or something strange will happen to them. Reduce long car trips, implement the recommendation recommended by the website carbonfootprint.com. Finally, I also promise not to eat gluttony and at least save $120 every month. The next step is reducing my carbon footprint. And according to the Carbon Footprint website 2020, below are the most effective steps which I could implement to reduce the carbon footprint and therefore to reduce my cost. This is the 5 section that recommends the page. So total potential savings are 153 kilograms CO2 with the top 5 steps suggested by Carbon Footprint website. Other changes that I can make to reduce my carbon footprint according to carbonfootprint.com are the following. Travel less and travel more, carbon footprint friendly. With this action, what I intend is to reduce the travel kilometers when I go from FabLab to my home in public transport. So I am sure that I can reduce these kilometers to 0, having the discipline, and I'm committed to doing so to reduce my carbon footprint and to help the world. Then for the public transport section, the kilometers traveled by bus will be 0. The kilometers traveled by taxi will be the same, 30 kilometers. Taking into account that the trips made by a car add a large number of kilometers to my carbon footprint, I promise not to make trips as long as the one made from Bogota to Cali. Taking into account that there are estimated and mandatory trips like the one made from Vitama to Bogota and vice versa, then following table has the total kilometers traveled for long trips with the respective reduction. Technology based on energy savings. In these steps, I promise to install energy saving light bulbs like LEDs, which can save 19% of lighting energy and cost from lighting. The idea is to replace all the light bulbs in my house with LEDs. According with Endesa and company, approximately 20% of the electrical consumption of your home corresponds to lighting. Therefore, 20% of the current consumption that corresponds to lighting must be calculated, and from that result, the 90% that corresponds to energy savings due to LEDs is subtracted. The annual consumption of light will be 998 kilowatts hour. So other ways that I can reduce my carbon footprint is reduce the consumption of meat, reduce clothes, textiles and shoes, and reduce computers and IT equipment. In the first point, in the first item, I will become a low meat eater due to the recommendations from G. Poor and T. Nemec, both are scientists of Oxford University. In the next item, according with my target that I set, I will cut the purchase of these items in half. And finally, in my future perspective, I do not plan to buy any technological equipment, and since I have bought a new computer, it will not be necessary to buy a new one for at least 7 years, so the cost for technological equipment are reduced $0. Then the next step in the next step final steps is calculating my carbon footprint with the respective reduction. According to the section on reducing my carbon footprint, I will show you what was the result of my strategies, because I have reduced. So in this section, I analyze a house. So here I have a total house footprint equal to 0.31 metric tons of CO2, and I have reduced energy consumption. This reduction is found in the document. In the section of flags is the same. In the section of car, according to the section 4.5, there is a reduction in travel kilometers traveled by car. The new total of kilometers is 916.6 kilometers. Therefore, here the data with the reduction, and total car footprint equal to 0.11 metric tons of CO2. The next section, motorbike, but is the same. Bus and rail, according to the section 4.5, and with my target, the target that I set, the number of kilometers traveled by bus will be cut to 0, and the kilometers traveled by taxi will be the same. Therefore, here we have total bus and rail footprint is equal to 0. Secondary, according to the section 4.7 and 3, I will become a low meat eater. I also promise not to eat gluttony and at least save $120 every month. I will cut the purchase of clothes, textile, shoes in half, and the cost for technological equipment are reduced 0, and cut restaurant, hotels, and pubs expenses in half. And therefore, here the data summary, and we have the total secondary footprint that is equal to 2.61 metric tons of CO2. Final results, I have the total of my carbon footprint that is equal to 3.04 metric tons of CO2. Results and conclusions. The implemented strategies described in this presentation were sufficient to reduce the carbon footprint by 14.5%. Here I have the carbon footprint with reduction and without reduction, without implemented the strategies and implemented strategies. And the reduction is for 40.5%, as shown here. So the decrease in the carbon footprint shows that you have to try to reduce the points that generate the most CO2. That is, the objectives must be focused on reducing these points. Finally, I would like to say that with a small change, a big difference is made, and that is never too late to become aware of the damage we do to our planet, and it is not too late to share our knowledge with other people to convince them to change as well.